What's going on, everybody? It's the Boxing Freaks. We're going to do a little fight preview for Joseph Parker, Anthony Joshua. Big, huge unification heavyweight championship fight coming up. Everybody knows, if you're a boxing fan, you know about Anthony Joshua. Everybody knows about Anthony Joshua. But we want to talk a little about Joseph Parker, what he brings to the table, what he can do. Can he give Anthony Joshua any trouble? Is he going to trouble Anthony Joshua, or is Anthony Joshua going to wash him? First of all, we're going to have to start.
Yeah, so I think let's just get right into Joseph Parker right quick. He's had sort of a meteoric rise in terms of coming from a relative unknown to becoming the WBO champion. And it's interesting because before he was able to win the belt, he actually, his camp actually didn't want the fight twice. It was offered to him because of the dangers involved.
Right.
But he ended up taking it, and he ended up winning by a fairly convincing unanimous decision, which is what ended up kind of setting up this fight.
Well, see, he's a title holder, and let me tell you about. Let's talk about this. He's got the WBO title, but he kind of fell into it. You know, he fought for a vacant title. He fought Andy Ruiz, and my problem with Parker is this. You know, earlier in his career, he was built to have devastating power. And in regards to fighting Joshua, if you've noticed, his power has dropped as he stepped up in his career. I'm talking about Parker.
Right.
So every time he stepped up, he's had 4 real fights against decent, solid heavyweights. Right? Earlier in his career, he got brought up like a normal heavyweight does. A lot of times they fight old, veterans who've been in it for 10 years. He fought Bodar, Brian Minto, Cali Meehan, Dimitrenko. Right? So he was brought up like a lot of other heavyweights are. And he had knockouts. He was making the knockout reels. You hear a lot of the Australian media to talk about him. They'll talk about his power. And I do think he's heavy-handed. I think naturally he's heavy-handed. Right? His punches hurt. But if you really analyze his record, it seems as though the explosion that he was built with while he was on his rise, it started to disappear. I mean, the top 4 opponents that he's faced, all within the last 2 years. So this is the recent stuff. This is him right now, age 26. This is him in his prime. Parker-Takam, great fighter, I think. He was a top 10 heavyweight not too long ago, in my opinion. Andy Ruiz, okay, he's solid. Obviously he's out of shape. That's been his controversy, but he's always had technical ability. Razvan Kojanu, the Romanian, and Hughie Furry, a young prospect. They've all got some skill, but he couldn't get any of them out of there.
Well, I think a big knock for Parker, and which is not something that can be said for example, Ortiz or Wilder or Joshua, is that he hasn't fought a big puncher. Takam may have been the biggest puncher he fought, and I think he's got like 27 knockouts and 35 wins. And now he did take some good shots in that fight. I saw that fight, and he took some really good shots. Yet I haven't seen his chin truly tested. I mean, Joshua's chin was tested verily against Klitschko, and he had to get up off the floor against a guy who has one of the top 10 KO ratios amongst heavyweights in history. So you got to consider the fact that Parker's power is not going to bother Joshua. He's going to have to take him to deep water. He's going to have to outwork him. He's going to have to outbox him. And
But here's the thing. And now with that said, let me cut you off there. With that said, that's the thing. See, Parker does. Let's look at his strengths. He's got fast hands for a heavyweight. He's got good footwork, and he's technically sound, right? And then given his solid skill level, given that, and his technical ability, you would have liked to see him put more of a clinic against the top 4 opponents that he has faced thus far. That wasn't the case. Andy Ruiz, Hughie Furry, they gave him some fits. They had success. I mean, he had a majority decisions, Whether or not you agree with the judges is a whole other thing. But regardless, you would hope, at least in regards to judging his potential fight against Joshua, you would hope that he would have put more a clinic on against those guys. Because like you said, that's the type of thing he's going to have to do against Joshua. But then you throw in another factor. He's also the shorter man, and he's not as long as Joshua. So
yeah, I mean, styles make fights. We've seen in the past undersized heavyweights. Rocky Marciano, Joe Frazier. Mike Tyson, to name a few, who were undersized heavyweights who had good heavyweight power, good boxing skills, could get inside on a guy and do work. Now, with that said, Parker is not the caliber of any of those three champions, not remotely.
His power has noticeably diminished as he stepped up, which is my point.
And all those guys were heavy-handed. All those guys, Rocky Marciano was heavy-handed. Joe Frazier, he could hit. He had to get people out of there with punches, with work over time, but he also could hit hard. Mike Tyson, I mean, his power goes without saying. His accuracy, his speed, his explosiveness. Parker is none of these things. And
so the problem is then we've got a guy whose power, which power is what he may very well absolutely end up needing to keep Joshua honest, has not been world class at a less than world class level.
But it is a boxing match. It is called the sweet science. Klitschko alluded to this in an interview prior to his fight with Joshua, before he got knocked out by Joshua, that Joshua was got his confidence from his physique, his build, his athleticism, but it's about boxing. Well, I saw Vladimir get in the ring and box him, and not only did he get outboxed, he got knocked out. So, there is something to be said, though, about being able to get into a ring with a guy, outbox him, control the space, control the ring itself, be a good ring generalship, control the pace of the fight, work things behind your jab and your 1-2, and win a fight. No, but the problem with that is nobody, as a regular boxing fan, wants to see that. People want to see a knockout. And I'll allude to the fact that, we just watched the Wilder-Ortiz fight. Wilder was getting washed. You and I scored that fight. We scored it almost the exact same way. Wilder was losing that fight. Ortiz was beating him to the punch. He was working him inside. He was doing the better boxing for most of the fight until he got knocked out. And when we did see Wilder come on, it was wild swinging punches, things that were just ugly to look at. But nobody cared. Nobody cared because he knocked Ortiz out. And that's what fans want to see. So,
and not only that, but what we did notice during that fight was early on, when Ortiz had more success before he had the second knockdown, he was the more disciplined fighter. He was more disciplined with his stance, more disciplined with not wasting movement or punches. You could have said the same about Wilder. He was kind of trying to bait him in a little bit. His stance was wide open. He was putting his hands down. So the question in this fight against Joshua, really what it comes down to, is he going to be able to box so well enough to neutralize arguably, the best heavyweight in the division for possibly 12 rounds?
Well, yeah, obviously.
Without the power to offset Joshua's power, and with that said, like you said, Joshua's got chin checked before, right? So he's not going to take a bigger punch than even a 40-year-old Vladimir Klitschko is probably going to give him the biggest punch, other than maybe Wilder right now in the division. That's probably just the way it is right now. So, can Parker do that? Can Parker utilize that technical ability? Can he overcome the physical disadvantages? He's not a small guy. He's 6'4" himself, but he's got about 3-4 inch reach disadvantage and a couple inches disadvantage on height to Joshua. So really, what does he do? Is he going to have to outbox him for 12 rounds? Can he do that? Or does he have to make it a dogfight? Can he make it a dogfight? And if he does make it a dogfight, can he make Joshua uncomfortable? Or has Joshua seen it all?
Well, let's talk about some of the things that Parker does well. And for one, he is a good boxer. He's a technically good boxer. He works things behind his jab, behind his 1-2. He throws this kind of ducking. He drops his head and throws this overhand left that I've seen him do that I don't like when he gets close in the corner. But other than that, he's a pretty good inside fighter. I think his defense is average. I don't think it's exceptional by any means. I don't think he'd be able to necessarily keep Joshua off of him mostly. But as far as his combinations, he throws more combinations than Joshua does. If he can keep his work rate up against Joshua, that will definitely go in his favor towards winning rounds. The problem is that I watched this fight against Takam, and neither of those guys threw a lot of punches from the outside. They got inside, they threw a lot of punches, they hit each other, they kind of punished each other a little bit, but it was a low war of attrition, I should say, with Parker coming out ahead in that with a decision in that regard. So he's the better boxer, I think, from a technical standpoint. I'm not sure his footwork is any better. I look at Joshua and I see that he is a big guy. He's got reach, and even when he gets inside, when he throws his punches, he squares to his opponent and throws his punches. I've rarely actually seen him off balance. Rarely have I actually seen him off balance. So getting Joshua off balance will be difficult. But Parker, he does have a good jab. He throws combinations. I think if he can work his way around the ring, he's going to be stalked probably most of the time, being that Joshua's the bigger guy, and Joshua has like a 10. Huh?
Here's the thing with Parker. It almost is like one of those things where you're right, he is a good boxer. He's a solid boxer. But I wouldn't call him an expert, a world-class boxer. And here's the thing with Parker. He's almost a jack of all trades, master of none, type of situation. And with that said, like I said, he's a solid boxer. We all can see that, but it's almost as if, he's got a kind of a complete package minus maybe the defense, but he doesn't excel at a single thing. And that's really what it comes down to in this fight for me, is that this is a colossal step up. I mean, this step up is huge based on who he's fought, jumping up to Anthony Joshua. And really, it kind of leads me to this. This might sound absurd to a lot of people because he's a young, undefeated champion, but I almost feel as if Parker got a little bit unlucky to win that vacant WBO title. I don't think he needed the title yet, because I think he's good enough to get guys who are the next level above the fighters that he's fought. So let's say Brian Jennings, Arthur Spielska, Malik Scott. I think he's better than those guys, and I think he's good enough to beat them, right? And jumping up from what he did to Joshua, it's a huge step up. It's a huge step up. He's never saw anything like this.
I'll go even further to say that he shouldn't even be fighting heavyweight. He should be ruling the cruiserweight division right now, because.
Well, see, you also made a point too, where you said Parker's a good boxer. You said he's a good boxer, and you just made a comment. You thought he was a better boxer. But the problem is this, and this is what I mean by why I almost feel like he got unlucky winning that title, and why he needed to fight more at another level. For example, Malik Scott, Brian Jennings, to evaluate his diminishing power, what we've seen, the diminishing power, to evaluate that himself a little bit more, to see how he can adjust his style and work on his boxing more to try to master something else. Because, like you said, he's a good boxer, but so then what happened in that Ruiz fight? What happened in the fight, who was it? Carlos Takam. What happened with the Hughie Fury fight? Now, with that said, against Carlos Takam, I thought he did way better. I thought he clearly won that fight. He looked good in that fight. He didn't get the knockout, and Takam was, I think, once again, I thought he was a top 10 heavyweight not so long ago. But with the Ruiz fight and the Hughie Fury fight, there leaves a lot to be desired, and that's what it comes down to. So we're talking about him. Can he outbox Joshua? Does he have enough, to outbox somebody like Joshua? I mean, for us, we would have had to see. I would have liked to see him put more of a clinic on against those other guys. That's what makes this.
I hear what you're saying. At the end of the day, this is not a complicated sport. I mean, when you get into the lower weights, we can talk boxing technicality all day, but even then, it's simple. Floyd Mayweather does not watch film, never watched film of any of his opponents. He got in the ring and he adjusted. At the top level in the heavyweight division, everybody, with few exceptions, knocked people out. John Ruiz, Chris Bird, Roy Jones for his one fight that he had. These guys are not going to knock people out in the heavyweight division, okay? But at the end of the day, the big guys, the big strong guys that are heavyweight champions, they're knocking each other out. They're knocking each other out. Wilder has 40 wins and 38 KOs. Joshua has 20 wins and 20 KOs. Okay, if you look at the Klitschko brothers, they both have over 50 knockouts in all of their fights. I mean, it's ridiculous. At the end of the day, when you get into these heavyweight fights with these heavyweight champions, you're talking about knockouts. And 9 times out of 10, I'd say 8 times out of 10, a knockout is going to happen. And even if you get to the deep water, I mean, the last fight that Joshua had against Takam, he knocked him out in round 10. I don't see this being any different. I think this will go 9 to 11 rounds, and Joshua's going to end up knocking Parker out because Parker's not going to be able to keep him off him.
And you know what? With that said, that's the thing, is that we haven't been seeing those knockouts from Parker, and I can't help but feel this. is that I feel maybe as if he fell in love with his power way too early in his career. He's still a young guy. He's only 26.
Well, then I think that's a false equivalency because Parker doesn't have the power to fall in love with. He can hit and bother guys his size, but
he was taking out the guys that they were putting in front of him. They were a little bit older, quote unquote, washed up veterans, but he was getting them out, and he was good. If you watch some of his other fights, if you listen to announcers, of course they're gonna hype their guy, but he was billed as being a puncher, and just based on how his activity has dropped in a fight like against Ruiz, for example, and Hughie Fury, it's almost like as if he's going away from that technical aspect that we know that he at least has. So that's why I was disappointed. Maybe I would have liked to see a more decisive decision in his last fight. And we'll see what happens. But I feel a little bit like he may have fallen in love with the perceived power that he had based on the knockouts that he was getting early in his career when he was on the rise. And then now, well, we're seeing that in this fight, for example, he's going to have to utilize a lot of those boxing skills that he's went away from. He hasn't been throwing the jab as much, for example.
Yeah, and I think early on it's a competitive fight, but at the end of the day, I think he's bitten off more than he can chew. I mean, if you look at Joshua, man, not only is he big and strong and athletic, he actually has gotten more and more in terms of endurance as his career has gone on. I think he showed a lot from that knockdown against Vladimir in the 6th, getting up,
he's coming off the round of the year,
looking gassed, and then coming back and knocking Vladimir out in the 11th round. In the 11th round, after going through all of that, he's got like a 10-centimeter reach advantage over Parker. He's bigger, stronger. He might not be as fast, but I don't think that's going to matter. Especially if the fight is either in a phone booth or if it's around the ring where Joshua has to stalk him and he's got him on the ropes that's inside. I mean, the person who lands the harder, more effective punches down the stretch is usually the one who wins. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I think that Joshua's just too strong, too good. He's got a chin. None of Parker's punches are going to really bother Joshua. He'd have to hit him. I mean, I don't know. He's got to have bricks in his gloves. I don't know what he's going to do to make him, to bother him. And even when a guy with Klitschko's power, put him on his ass and he got up and he still got right back in his face. He wasn't scared remotely of that. He got right back in there and finished the job. I think that Parker is actually way out of his league here. The jump, he has a belt. Okay, that's all well and good. But the jump between class here is huge. I think you've got Wilder just from sheer size, strength, and length, and obviously power in Joshua, and then that's it. I don't think there's anybody else in the division right now that's going to be able to handle those two. And I'm not a Wilder fan at all, but that's it. I don't think that any of these other guys can make it happen, and that's why I think that. Go ahead.
No, and that's and that's just. I think Joseph Parker is a good fighter. I think he's a good heavyweight. I agree with your entire assessment, 100%. But I think he's a good fighter. I think this fight is too soon for him. I'm not sure if I could ever choose him to beat Anthony Joshua, even if this didn't happen and he gained another 2 years of experience. But I do believe that it would have been better for him to take a Brian Jennings type of fighter, for example, before this. It's a huge step up. It's a colossal step up. You never see a step up, something like this. I mean, he was fighting a prospect. Hughie Fury is a talented fighter in his own right, but he's still a prospect.
Well, that's not mostly that's not entirely that team's fault. I mean, Parker's team. They have to take the fights that are there.
The
heavyweight division has been watered down for a long time now.
I was going to give him some credit. With the credit I was going to give him is this: if he does get knocked out by Anthony Joshua, which that's what I believe. I'm taking Joshua by knockout. I agree with you. I think it's going to be maybe 8th, 9th round KO by Joshua. But I'm going to give Parker credit with this. I think Parker is trouble for anybody else in this division. I see Parker matching up way better, obviously, with Wilder than with Joshua. And actually, I think Parker and Wilder would be a great fight.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to say. Styles make fights. It's hard to say. Ortiz had the power to bother Wilder, and Wilder knew that, which is why Wilder was skittish for those first 5-6 rounds. I think also that he didn't feel as confident in himself as he did until after he weathered that storm. It was around 5 or 6 where he was hurt. I mean, he was pretty much out on his feet, and he got out of there, came back in. He still didn't have his legs. Got out of that round and came back and was able to finish the fight. I think before then he was very much worried about what could happen against Ortiz. So at this point, I think that fight gave Wilder a ton of confidence, and I don't really see him. I don't really see somebody like Parker beating him. But again, styles make fights, and this is good. This is good for Joshua, because Joshua has to figure out how to beat small, possibly crafty guys like this who are smaller, compact, can box, can get in behind their jab, get on the inside, do some work. He's got to learn. He's got to be able to fight guys like that. He beat Takam, who was like 6 feet. Has a pretty good chin. He got him out of there in round 10. So he's got some experience doing that, but you only get more experience by beating people who are at the top of their game. And right now, Parker's at the top of his game, at least. He's got a belt. So you got to get that belt, and then you got to go make the fight with Wilder. But he can't look past this fight, obviously. I mean, you can still lose. It's a heavyweight fight, and one punch can still change a fight. So we'll just have to see. But I'm rolling with Joshua all the way.
So Joshua's the favorite. I think Joshua's going to win as well. Joshua's the favorite, but it's boxing. Anything can happen. What does Parker have to do? What should be his number one game plan? What does he have to do to maximize his chances for success to score points and have a chance to possibly win the fight?
Other than a gift from God, I don't know. Joshua's size notwithstanding.
It's too big of a bite to chew, too much too soon, and is it just absolutely no chance? You don't see any way that Parker can have any kind of success? Because as we said, he's got the boxing, but he hasn't looked fantastic recently with his boxing skills. So do you think he has the ability to get inside, make it a dog fight, and make Joshua uncomfortable, given the fact that he's shorter than Vladimir Klitschko, so it actually is going to present something a little bit different.
The thing about the heavyweight division that's different from all the other divisions, other than the sheer size of the guys, is in most fights it's usually the better boxer puncher who wins, not just the better boxer or just the better puncher. Usually the better boxer puncher wins the fight. So you got a guy who can box but can also hit hard. That person usually wins the fight. Most times, unless they're just a one punch you changes and you get a knockout. So those are kind of the two things that happen. If you look at Lennox Lewis's career, he was always the better boxer puncher in almost all of his fights. I mean, he beat every guy that they put in front of him. Even though he had a couple losses from knockouts, he also came back and knocked those guys out. If you're the better boxer puncher, you tend to win the fight. And while Parker is probably a little bit better of a boxer, he's definitely not the better puncher. And Joshua can do both. He's got reach. And he's more and more as he fights, he uses his jab. He's going to get in on him, and he's going to get him out of there. And that's pretty much it. I think it's a foregone conclusion. In fact, I could go without ever seeing – I could actually go with this fight not happening. It's going to happen, but I would rather just see Joshua Wilder right off. And it makes me looking past it and me being premature and saying,
I agree. And
Joshua's just going to win.
That,
but
Parker Ortiz on the flip side would have been great as well, in my opinion, if that was the route that it was taken. I thought that would have been a fantastic fight.
Ortiz is still in the mix. Ortiz really should have gotten Wilder out of there. He let him off the hook. He was a little too disciplined. He had him hurt. Wilder had no legs coming back into what round was that? Was it the 7th round? I think the 6th round he got hurt. The 7th round he came back in somewhere around there, and he had no legs. I mean, his legs were gone. He looked like he actually looked concussed. He was wobbly. He didn't actually look like he was all there. I'm surprised a ringside doctor didn't call the fight right then and there, because he actually very well could have. Again, so kudos to Wilder for being able to wade through the fog of his brain and see clearly to come back to finish the fight. But I think Ortiz is still right in the mix. I mean, he's good enough to fight these guys because he should have knocked Wilder out. He should have, and he didn't. He didn't. It's really a shame because Wilder, in my opinion, had nothing for him until Ortiz got sloppy and ate some right hands. So, I think Ortiz is still right there. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if after Wilder and Joshua fight, if that is indeed happens, that Ortiz doesn't fight one of them, or I wouldn't be surprised at a rematch between the two. Or I wouldn't be surprised at Ortiz fighting Joshua before Wilder and Joshua fight. I still think there's fights to be made with Ortiz out there, and not just these last two guys left standing.
Oh, 100%. Look, Ortiz gave a great showing on himself. But we knew that. I told you before the fight. I said Ortiz is going to give Wilder some trouble. I thought Ortiz was going to win the fight. I said I think Ortiz is going to win this fight because what Wilder struggles with, he struggles with technically gifted boxers. Right? That's the problem. Bermain Stavern was not a technically gifted boxer. He had a huge punch, but he wasn't gifted like Luis Ortiz. Ortiz is a gifted boxer, and one thing that we noticed throughout that fight, like we said, was the lack of discipline for Wilder. It works for him. It's been working. I told you, I like it. I like the showboating. I like the personality. I think it's great for boxing, but in the ring against a skilled technical fighter, he leaves himself wide. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. He leaves himself wide open. He leaves his stance open. He fights really sloppy and lazy sometimes. But really, the thing that kills us is that he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to do that. But it's also a scary thing too, because it's not only did he show, obviously he got up from that and he won the fight, and it was a devastating knockout. But the scary thing is he's got so much more room for improvement.
Yeah, he does.
There's Wilder.
He does. So, actually, him and Joshua do. It's rare. It's rare, in my opinion, that you have two guys who could probably go back and forth for a long time atop the heavyweight division. It's probably going to take, unfortunately, a bad loss, and then maybe another loss against a prime guy for either one of them to go away. Because the natural thing to happen if either one of them loses to the other is a rematch. I mean, that's what we wanted when we saw Vitaly and Lennox fight. These guys were in a phone booth fighting for 7 rounds until they got called on a cut, and everybody wanted a rematch. And the scorecards had Vitaly up when that fight was called. So that's what happens when you got two guys pretty much mostly in their prime, or able to still be in there and bang. That's probably what's going to happen. So I don't see one fight between these two just being their only fight. I could see this being an Ali Frazier situation where they have at least three fights.
Well, it's certainly looking like the heavyweight division is in the best hands it's been in a long time. And after Klitschko's retirement, both Klitschko's, I'm sure they're not going to be disappointed. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Of course, Parker's still a WBO champion. It's a unification fight. Anything can happen in boxing. It's two undefeated young warriors, dogs. They're both hungry. And it'll be interesting what happens between Parker and Joshua. And that's first. And let's see.
Now, we do have some upcoming fights. Joshua Parker's obviously on March 31st on 331 on Showtime. But this weekend is going to be Lipinets and Garcia. That's gonna be a big fight, and obviously May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, we got Canelo and Triple G. Just real quick, what do you think about the news that Canelo was popped for an illegal substance? I personally don't think it's a big deal.
Well, you know what? Let me stop you right there. Historically, I always think it's a big deal. And last year, or is it like a year and a half ago, when Povetkin got popped, I was very disappointed. I was pissed because I wanted to see the fight, and it was bad. It's a bad situation. I hate seeing it. It's dangerous. It's illegal. I don't like it. Guys risk their life. But I will say this. I don't usually do this, and maybe it's because I want to see this fight so much between Triple G and Canelo, and because we have to see this fight. I believe him. I believe Canelo. There was some problems. I've read an article about a year and a half ago, a research article and there is some problems. There is some problems with clenbuterol, and it could have possibly been other substances that's been tainted in meat from Mexico, and not just Mexico. There was a couple of other countries that I read about in South America.
There's been a few athletes. There's been Olympic athletes, quite a few.
And I saw it happen.
Boxers from Mexico. So I think it's plausible. I don't think he cheated. He's never had a failed test. I don't think when he came in for the last fight, he looked big enough to be in the fight. He looked ready. He was able to take Triple G's punches when he got hit. Even though he did feel his power. I don't think it's an issue where
Canelo Alvarez is a clean fighter. Yeah. I think Canelo Alvarez is a clean fighter. He even said after it happened, he said, "Hey, I mean, this is what a clean fighter does." Exactly what his response was. He said, "We're taking our training camp to the United States." I read something along those lines. He said, "We're taking our training camp to the United States. I'll do all the testing. We don't want anybody to think anything. We're gonna cover our name." And that's what a clean athlete does. That's what a clean athlete's supposed to do. You don't beat around the bush. You don't try to defend yourself. You don't try to make excuses. And that's what it comes down to. I don't see him bringing up the tainted meat as an excuse. I think I agree with him. I think, of course, we don't know for sure, but I think he's telling the truth. I think he's a clean athlete. There's never been a problem with him with testing, and I think he's one of the clean athletes in our sport. I have no problem with it. I haven't really read the news too much. I don't know what other boxing fans or experts are saying, but hopefully the fight goes on, and they're gonna do their due diligence. He's gonna get tested. Everybody's gonna see everything. He's not gonna show up to this fight dirty.
Yeah, I agree.
Real quick, before we go off, I want to know your thoughts. I know you don't know a whole lot of Lipinets until you saw his last few fights, and I know you're very familiar with Mikey Garcia, multi-division champ Mikey Garcia. What do you think about this fight?
Yeah, we were. I know we were discussing that before. I'm a Mikey Garcia fan. I know a lot of people thought he quit that fight. But I don't know. I think it's gonna be a competitive fight. But with that said, I don't think that Lipinets has enough under his belt yet to take on a Mikey Garcia type.
It's a big step up.
I think it's too soon for him. I think it's too soon for him.
Like the Parker-Joshua fight. But he's the champ, and he has to take this fight. Why not? I mean, this is a huge fight.
I get it. I get it, and I don't know how much. I hope he's getting paid well for it. But it's a dangerous fight. He very well could get knocked out. He very well could get knocked out. So I don't really know. I don't know. I can't honestly. I can't say for sure exactly how it's gonna go down. I mean, Mikey Garcia is like 30. He's 30. He's undefeated, and he's got like 30 KOs. And at super lightweight. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. He's only age 30. It's not like he's outside of his prime. He hits very hard. For that weight.
Well, he's very skilled too. And you mentioned boxer punchers earlier. He's one of the true definitions of boxer puncher. He's a complete fighter, almost as complete as it gets. I love his style. I love his package. I love everything he does. He's got power. He can box. He's fast. The only thing with Mikey Garcia, I guess what it comes down to is the inactivity. He had the fight last year. He came back against Latachani, but
he fought twice in 2017, then once in 16. But between 16 and 14, he was off for roughly 2 years there. Almost. I don't know how long the layoff was.
Is Lipinets talented enough to capitalize on that? I don't know. We'll see. But if he is, then we've got a new player at 140. That's for sure.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. That division at this point is wide open now. That Terrence Crawford, has left the division. Thank God for all the other boxers in the division because Terrence Crawford is just a phenom. So, I mean, without him there, the division's wide open. Maybe Mikey Garcia rules it, but there was nobody else. There was nobody who was going to take his crown. So he he vacated. He left that division. He's going to 147 now. He says so. Yeah, I think this will be a good fight. But I think Mikey's going to take it. I think he's going to win by knockout. I think he's going to knock him flat out. I think it'll happen. I think it'll happen by somewhere between round 6 and 8.
6 and 8, and you know what? I'm actually going to go with the upset. I think Lipinets is going to take it. I think he's going to be real good. I think he's improving every fight, and I'm calling the upset. We'll see what happens. This is the Boxing Freaks. Everybody give us your thoughts. Let us know what you think about Joseph Parker, Anthony Joshua coming up. How do you feel about that fight? Anything else? Mikey Garcia, Sergey Lipinets, give us some thoughts on Canelo and Triple G.